So today we're going to talk about testosterone replacement and how we got here. What is the history of it? Well, we all know the guy in the gym who's now benching 450 and put on 30 pounds of muscle in the summer, and he swears he's a natty. But again, how did we get here? Well, the story of testosterone replacement actually takes place in the ancient world. And believe it or not, it actually starts with animal testicles, and we go all the way up until now till we have injectable testosterone. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, what is testosterone? Well, it's the primary male hormone. Essentially, it makes men men.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
And gives men all the characteristics that people generally think about. Their behavior, their looks, how they think, how they act. All of that, in essence, is related to testosterone. But what's important is that in the ancient world, they knew this. They knew that there was characteristics of men, and there was something that made men men.
Okay.
Now, there is documentation that does prove that they did discuss and write about these characteristics. But one of the things you can think about is castration and eunuchs. And castration was used rapidly in the ancient world. And you can think about this as the anti-TRT, anti-testosterone. They did this to reverse all of the characteristics I previously discussed. So they did it to reduce rebellion in males. They would use eunuchs to guard harems, or if they wanted to cease somebody from passing on their genetic material, castration. Now again, there are several texts to talk about the effects of testosterone or the characteristics of testosterone. We have the Kama Sutra, we have the Ebers Papyrus, which is from Egypt, which is dated to about 1500 BC, and the ancient Greeks in about 400 BC also document these characteristics. So back to the Ebers Papyrus. This is the oldest medical text on Earth, or at least what they found. And if you go through the text, it talks about different potions and remedies, and how one of them actually is how to treat impotence. And it talks about making a potion with honey, and the one specific thing, fox testicles. What? And the reason for that was to get the vitality and the strength and the speed of a fox. Ancient Greeks, very similar. They have texts talking about using, again, fox testicles to get the vitality of a fox. Ancient Arabic medicine also talks about this. In the 12th century, Chinese philosophers also talked about using raw testicles or dried testicles to mix in different potions, again, to give different male characteristics, or at least enhance those characteristics. In Germany, around the same time, 12th century, there was a bishop who also documented about using powdered hog testicles, again, for the same enhancement effect. Now we skip ahead to about the 1900s. This time in Germany, they manufactured at least what they thought was one of the first replacements by a pill. So it was manufactured under the name Testoform. In the early 1900s in Germany, one of the first proposed drugs, or a drug as we would know it, was called Testosterone. And this was used to help with male enhancement of testosterone and the characteristics of testosterone. And one of the key ingredients was animal testicles. Now, what's important about this, because when they look back, they don't think this drug actually worked. It was a placebo effect, but it kind of sprung the idea of using testosterone and using it in a pill form and marketing it. And many companies throughout Europe did the same thing. One of the next major breakthroughs was by a physician, Charles Brown Séquard. And what he did was he experimented on himself over a 20-day period where he extracted testicular blood and semen from guinea pigs and dogs and injected himself daily. He reported he had increased strength, increased concentration, and he was less fatigued. And this again sparked a new industry. People looking at extracting material from the testicles and using it specifically in others. One of the last things I want to talk about before we get to the synthesis of testosterone or the isolation of testosterone is testicular transplant. And so there was a Dr. Frank Litson, who transplanted testicles. He used 20 testicles from executed prisoners and transplanted it to inmates. These inmates reported rejuvenation, increased strength, better concentration, all the things that were previously known about the testiculars and testosterone. In Vienna, at the same time he was doing this, there was different experiments transplanting monkey testicles into humans. There's actually a story from Iceland where a physician helped broker a deal between a poor farmer and a rich Norwegian businessman. The poor farmer needed money and the rich businessman was impotent. So they brokered a deal and the businessman obtained the testicles from this poor farmer. The businessman actually reported that his impotence went away after he had the testicles transplanted, and he was able to have 3 kids after this. But this practice was actually continued in the Soviet Union up until the 1980s. Now, in the 1930s was when testosterone was first isolated by itself, and by the 1940s, it was the first time it was injected or used in humans as an isolate. By the 1950s and 60s, it became what we know today with testosterone. Now we had proof of documentation and how much to use and the direct effects. And that's essentially where we have testosterone replacement. Well, what does this all mean? What's the whole point? Well, it just shows that everything in medicine has a history, and it starts with knowing the characteristics, knowing what it is we're trying to isolate, and then going to researching it and then extracting it. And we see nowadays that testosterone is used all around, but again, it has its origins in the ancient world.